Andrew Seidel is a constitutional attorney with the Freedom From Religion Foundation, educating the public about non-theism and ensuring that the Establishment Clause of the Constitution is upheld. He is also a former Grand Canyon tour guide and an accomplished nature photographer whose work has been displayed in galleries in Colorado, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, and Maryland. Please welcome Mr. Andrew Seidel.
Thank you. So after Beat Poetry and before James Croft, this is no pressure at all. Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to talk about finding a job in Freethought. Okay. And I'm going to take Jamila's advice and I'm going to tell a story first. I'm going to tell you how I got my job. And then we'll use that journey to employment. We'll tease out the important themes and then we'll talk about each of those. And then and this is actually in your booklet on page 46, I think, if you want to pull it out. I'm going to give you the results of a incredibly unscientific email survey that I conducted of some of the leaders in the Freethought community, the people who have the power to hire you in the future. So this is kind of what they're looking for, what they're not looking for, may be of interest to you. So how did I get my job? I knew what I wanted to do. When I finished law school, I was a dyed-in-the-wool atheist, and I knew that I wanted to work for atheism and the separation of state and church. It was very easy for me. This is what I wanted to do, and it was clear in my mind, and the only question was, how am I going to go about doing this? I think it's important that you have a clear idea of what you want to do. I wanted to be a First Amendment attorney. I wanted to keep state and church separate, but I also wanted to advocate for non-believers. So I didn't just want to do law. And there's only a few organizations that do that, and FFRF is the biggest. They do awesome work, so I targeted them. All right? I went after them. I was actually already a member of FFRF, which really helps, so everybody should join. But I was doing research on their membership numbers, seeing if they were in a spot where they could start hiring other attorneys. And I noticed that they had a graduate essay contest open. And for those of you that don't know this, we actually have a high school essay contest, a college level essay contest, and a graduate essay contest. Highly recommend that you all enter. I think the top prize now in each of those is $3,000. So that's a good chunk of change. I got second place in the essay contest, but this was perfect. It was an in with Dan and Annie Laurie, the co-presidents. I started emailing with them, not regularly, but enough that they knew who I was. And at this time, I was actually in law school. I was getting a master's of law. And so I started using that time to write about some of the legal challenges that FFRF was bringing. And I got one of those writings published, and I sent it to FFRF, said, hey, look, I'm writing about you in a very positive manner. And I also started taking classes. So I didn't have the job I wanted yet, but I started learning all I could about that job at the time. So I took an Establishment Clause class. I wrote and read as much as I could about this area of the law. And after I won that essay contest, I began volunteering with FFRF. So I was in Colorado, but I said, I'm an attorney here. If you guys have anything you need help doing, I'm happy to help. Just let me know. And they gave me a few just kind of random legal research projects that I took up and started doing, sent them the product, and that was it. And then I kind of sealed the deal. Dan Barker came to Denver to speak, and I emailed him and I said, look, I'd really like to take you out to breakfast. I've done all this work for you guys. I'd like to meet you face to face. And I mean, who's going to say no to a free breakfast, right? So it was best $25 I ever spent. I gave Dan my resume at that meeting. I gave him a cover letter. I gave him copies of all the law review articles that I had written about them. And then as soon as I got home from that meeting, I emailed Dan all those same things, and I emailed Annie Laurie all those same things. So they had a hard copy and a digital copy. So what does this mean for you? I mean, what themes are involved in this? The general principles are, you got to be a decent writer at the very least, network, volunteer, persevere, and go do something that you love. Okay? So let's go through these. And the first one, writing. This has kind of been I noticed there's a little bit of a common denominator here today. Cecil has written books, JT Hemmant write blogs, Jamila is a former current journalist. We have lots of authors here. So, you may notice that writing is actually important. Now, when I was in undergrad, I was a neuroscience major. And I kind of wanted to be a doctor, and I didn't think I was going to need writing for anything at all. How many of you are science majors? Anybody? Yeah, lots. Do you guys think writing is important? Yeah, it's very important. It's actually going to be important in any field that you want to go into. Right? You need to become at least a competent writer. You don't need to be great. And given the importance of writing and the student essays that I've seen and the cover letters that I've seen come into FFRF, I thought we could talk about a few things that you can do to improve your writing very easily. First, adjectives. You have to be careful with your adjectives. If the reader doesn't agree with the adjective that you're using, you're losing credibility right off the bat. So if you say something is stupid or ridiculous, okay, and the reader doesn't agree with you, you've lost credibility with that reader. If something is stupid and ridiculous, show the reader that it's stupid and ridiculous. Don't just tell them, okay? So these are kind of these sort of inflammatory adjectives, not things like blue sky or green grass, things that may be prone to disagreement. And this is a pet peeve of mine, and it's very easy to spot. I know when you're doing it, you don't think that it is, but don't use the thesaurus function for everything. Okay? Use it to find the right word, not the word that looks big or that you think is going to make you sound smarter. This happens all the time. People don't ingest a Coke and imbibe a Coke and ingest a burger. They drink a Coke and they eat a burger. People don't, they don't proceed with their intestine. They go with their gut. Okay, so say it. All right? And there's a great clip. I showed this last year, but it's a great clip. This is from Friends, and let's make sure that it's. I don't know. We'll hope it's audible. Joey is writing a letter of recommendation for Monica and Chandler to adopt a baby. So let's see if it. Nope, no audio. And it's plugged in.
Do you do voice?
I don't do voices. I'm very sorry. Well, you can look this up. It's a really funny clip. He says that they're warm, kind, compassionate beings, and then he goes and looks at, and he does every single word from the thesaurus. So warm becomes humid. Okay? They have big hearts becomes large aortic pumps. Okay? And you sound ridiculous. And words also have connotations. Okay? Words don't just have a simple definition. So when you look in the thesaurus, the synonym is not exact. Warm and humid is a good example. The interchange doesn't work. Anyway, you can come find me later and we can watch it on the laptop. So we'll skip that one. The last key to writing is to be concise. You've got to be short. People with the power to hire you don't have a lot of time, and if they're reading a lot of extra nonsense in your letters, they're not going to be happy about it. Don't waste time with extra sentences and verbiage. There's some good examples on here. Excess verbiage. That right there is verbiage. You don't need to say excess. Verbiage means too many words. So you're saying excess too many words. Okay? If something goes without saying, why are you saying it? If something is important to note, if it's important to note, just note it. And then don't use 10 words when you can use 5, and don't use 5 when you can use 1. My favorite example is at this point in time is the exact same thing as saying now. So say now. Okay? If you really need help, go get this book, On Writing Well by William Zinsser. Fantastic book. This book changed my life, really helped me through law school. The number one thing that I learned from this book is that good writing does not just happen. Your first draft is not going to be your final draft, and if you think that, you need to read this book. And the best part about it is he actually shows you. So this is a page from the book, and this right here, this is a rough draft of the book, and you can see how he went and edited. So every good thing you've read probably has been edited, re-edited, rewritten. I wrote a legal complaint a month ago, and I thought it was really good. We haven't filed it yet, but I went back and reread it last week, and it was terrible. It was so bad. I'm going to go rewrite the whole thing. All right? So it's a good idea to step back from your writing for a time. Anyway, moving on. I was so sick of hearing this when I was looking for a job. Networking. You've got to network. The bottom line is that there is a lot of talented people in the job market right now, and if you have a similar resume as somebody else, but the organization knows the other person, they've met that person at, say, a conference, it's pretty easy who they're going to choose. Okay, and conferences are a perfect time to network. I asked this question last year, and I'm hoping to get a better response, but how many of you brought a resume to give out at this conference? Yes. Last year it was 0. We have 1 this year. Okay? That's excellent. Excellent. I mean, this is really important. You know, FFRF, Secular Coalition, American Atheists, Americans United, SSA, all these groups are here or have representatives here. This is a perfect time to meet them, get on their radar. You know, you should at least be going and introducing yourself, but I highly recommend bringing resumes and giving them out. Next thing, volunteer. Do anything. Stuff envelopes. Take out the trash. Even if you're not in the same city, I was in Colorado and I volunteered for FFRF in Madison, Wisconsin. Callie's here, so I'm going to embarrass her. Callie was an intern at FFRF. She worked for free, and then we gave her a $1,000 scholarship because she kicked so much butt. Okay? Another way to volunteer is do something like one of these kids have done, you know? This is Gage Pulliam. Anybody heard of him? Got the 10 Commandments taken down in his school. We ended up giving him a $1,000 award for having backbone. You know, this is a great way to volunteer. This is one of the biggest hurdles, but it's slowly coming down, is that we need students who are willing to stand up against theocracy. We need them to do it in the legal arena. And, you know, we're really starting to see that change. Duncan was just telling me that that group has become very, very close, those kind of student plaintiffs. So we need more of them. Second cliche, persevere. When I graduated law school in 2009, it was one of the worst job markets ever. It was completely flooded. I applied for so many jobs before I went back to school and got an LLM. Right? But now, while I was getting my LLM, I invested, and I told you this at the beginning. I spent a lot of time learning about the job that I wanted to do. And when I was working at a law firm before FFRF, I tried to take all cases that were going to be similar to what I wanted to do. You know, I had a client that was a school. I had some prisoners that were clients. I did a lot of nonprofit work, which is really important in this field. So keep up with the current events in the movement while you're doing what it is that you're stuck doing. And you should also join any group that you may want to be a part of working for. That's really important. You know, one of the first things we do is go look up and see if we know this person, if they're in our membership database. Okay. I love my job. You know, I sometimes say that I'm lucky. I sometimes say that I'm lucky, but that's not really true. I worked really hard to get the job that I want. You know, I get to do these great things. I get to protest. I get to counter-protest. I get to debate talking hairdos, as the Reverend Nuge mentioned. Bill, actually, at the end of this, he told me I was going to heaven. So that's a pretty big win, I think. But I also get to do real substantive good in the job that I do. This is Margaret Dowdy. Anybody heard of her recently? Yeah. Margaret is from England. She's actually lived in the U.S. for 30 years. She is an atheist, and she was trying to become a citizen, and they said, you have to take an oath to bear arms. And she said, I don't want to do that. It goes against what I believe. And they said, well, that has to be a religious belief. And you have to have a church that's willing to document your religious belief. And 2 people from that church hierarchy have to sign off on it. So I wrote them a letter, and she actually was sworn in as an American citizen a couple weeks ago. So big win. And I love being able to do that. I mean, so find something you love and go after it. Find something in the movement you love if that's what you want to do. But I have to give a word of warning here, and I don't mean to be a dream crusher. I really don't want to be harsh, but it's not just enough to be passionate. Okay? It's not just enough to really want to do something. You have to have the skills that fit an organization's needs, which is why you need to take the time to build those skills. You know, you're not just going to get to travel around the country doing talks because it's something you like to do. You really have to work to get that. I'm trying to catch up on time here. So this is just a note. This is good advice. It doesn't apply to just the Freethought movement. Clean up your social media. All right. There's some instructive pictures here. This young lady was a New England cheerleader for the Patriots. When she posted that picture on her Facebook page, she was fired. This guy was offered a job at Cisco,
And he had to weigh the utility of a fatty paycheck against the daily commute to San Jose and hating the work. Cisco rescinded the job offer. I mean, if you have pictures like this on your Facebook, it doesn't really say good things about it. I mean, this is a little inventive. Right? It's not saying great things about you. Okay, so clean up your social media. If you guys have your books, you should check this out on page 46. This is the unscientific survey that I did. I'm going to just point out just a few things. You can look over it at your leisure. You can come talk to me about it if you want later. The number one thing that people are looking for who have the power to hire you is suitability for the particular job. Okay? The number one thing they don't want to see is somebody with no experience in the movement. And then if you look down at number 7 there, the first thing, one piece of advice you would give free thinkers looking for jobs in the Freethought movement, the first thing that most people said, or something similar to this, is seek out work without an announcement. Okay? And, you know, this actually happened to me in my job search. FFRF did not post a job saying, we're looking to hire an attorney. You know, like I said, I targeted them. I went after them. You should all be able to do this. You know, this is one of the great things about our movement, is that it's growing and there's a lot of opportunity. You don't have to do necessarily the traditional job seeking. You don't have to wait for something to come up and then apply for it. You can kind of make your own job. You see this a lot. Hemet has made his own job. He's a math teacher, also The Friendly Atheist, read by, I don't know, probably millions of people every year, I'm sure. Same with Greta Christina, you know. You can be president of your local atheist society and then host a TV show. But you do get Ricky Gervais to say that you're awesome, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, okay, so I need to update that. I apologize. Okay. This is one of the biggest things. We really need, I mentioned it earlier, we need brave plaintiffs. You could get paid to do this. You know, not in the traditional sense, but Jessica got a huge scholarship. We give out scholarships all the time to students who are willing to help out on this. You can even win money in the court cases sometimes. Or you can go start your own organization. This is what Annie Laurie did. You know, there was a prayer at a local government meeting and she didn't like it, and now we have 19,000 members across the country. So I don't want you to be disheartened by this. There's plenty that you can do in this movement, but take the time, build the skills, and do it right. So we got some time for questions, I think. Well, so this is one thing that's really important. We need people who have money. You can be a donor. If you have a job that's making money, I mean, and that's kind of, I was an attorney at a small law firm in Colorado for a while, and I used that time to build the skills, like I was talking about. I looked for areas of overlap, and I really tried to emphasize those so that I could learn more about the job that I wanted, and it was really valuable when I was interviewing, Tell us about some of the cases you've worked on. Well, this, and it is exactly the same as this one that you guys have. So, I think that would apply for anything. We just hired somebody who has a writing background in technical writing, which doesn't seem to overlap, but it's really important because writing is a very, very valuable skill to have, and we actually, have a need for anybody who's good writing. So it's, again, use the job you have right now to build the skills that you want. And if you like the job you have right now, just stay in and start donating some of that money. Become a member of FFRF too.
I just graduated high school and I'm starting college in the fall. And I really don't know what to study. I like science, but no idea. Can you talk about what areas would be valuable to the movement?
Yeah. So if you look at number 4 on the chart there, that was a question I asked. What kind of degrees and what majors did people have who are your current employees? And you can see there's a pretty broad range. Humanities is the biggest one, social sciences, English, journalism, writing. Again, but the number one thing is not necessarily what your background was, but do you fit the job? Do you fit what their needs at that time? And again, I would say it's never going to hurt you to learn to write really well. So, Matt?
So I noticed on number 4, down at the bottom, there's 5% with business.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe if we increase that, we would do a better job with funding and finance.
I think that would be very valuable. Yes. I do. Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly, Jamila.
Everything that this country needs, I think this movement needs, and any kind of critical thinking you can do, please, if you've got a debate team, get on it. Learn how to formulate an argument, and call in the talk shows. Get practice doing that. You know,
I think that's a good idea, and if you can get, I mean, you mentioned writing op-eds.
Yeah.
If you can do that too, and the young people in this country don't use their voice enough. And I mean, if a newspaper gets an op-ed for somebody who's 18 or 20 years old, and you put that on there, I think they're going to be more likely to publish that.
or a female person.
Or a female person.
We need those.
And that's something you can put on your resume and put in your file. JT.
Something I notice as a blogger reading the news every day is being entrenched in all the bad shit that's happening to atheists has a tendency to kind of bring you down and kind of burn you out in that way. And I can only imagine it's worse for someone like you who has to deal with these lawsuits and all these, frankly, patently evil people doing terrible things to atheist students. For the people who do dedicate their lives to activism, how would you advise people to not let that get to them and not let it drag down their conscience and not let it burn them out?
I think that's a really important question. Burnout is a really big problem, particularly in law, not just in state church issues, but in other areas of law. The number one thing is you have to find the work-life balance that works for you. At FFRF, we're so overwhelmed. We got 2,500 complaints last year. We have 4 attorneys. And that's unique complaints. That's not just all the emails and phone calls we get. That was well over 3,000. We could work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and still probably be a little behind on everything that's coming in the door. So I've set a limit where I only do my 40 hours a week, and if I have a lawsuit to write, I will go home and I will write it maybe a little bit on the weekend, but you have to find the work-life balance that works for you, and you just have to be strict about it. My wife is also an attorney at FFRF, and that makes it even worse because we can get sucked into talking about work and our whole weekend is gone. So we have an intersection on our drive home, and once we get past that intersection, we don't talk about FFRF. Work-life balance is incredibly important. You have to find, it's going to be different for everybody. You have to find it. Thank you.